have children or they want to go, they want to wear pass or what. So they have to create this, the lifestyle so that they can continue to have clothes to wear and all this. Their living, their entertainment, and all this. They're not using that place as a forefront to do the operation. This one so they are learning, but it's not easy. Lucky I never got involved. So let's move on. To set up dedicated center for public health. Let's look at this one for a moment. That will educate and monitor this. See only one, same like other, similar to Centers for Disease Control, CDC like this. I don't know what I'll do if I stay in, I go to China. 每天去吃功夫啊，功夫茶我会一包是炒饭，是米线，不要放辣椒，比如说不要辣椒，吃面啊，炒面，depends on whether you're in the north or south. In the south is mostly like different than the north. And then mostly you just go to or go to KFC. 假如要去中国吃 KFC，不可能去，要换人民币。I have a bank so I have to check 看我的这些可以用。A long time already, maybe my account closed. I have to go Beijing, some a few bank account to go and check everything. See all the bank accounts. They can transfer. What else? Can use I don't know whether to use credit card. Wasting I cannot use. So I have to use control or do ATM control. Anyone can go there and open the bank. Last time I go there without any guarantee to work. Then I close. So I went and see 可以用。No, I still remember. Maybe some people take my card. So that's all. They never say. Just say CDC. That's all. Okay, this is as I said, these are 6 areas to improve, yes, but if you can have prevention, detection, early warning system, it's not there. Again, it will happen. I don't know when. I don't want to say because I observe how the situation unfolds. All this, yeah, better on my mind. All these years. So through the years, I'll be able, but the time I said I'm not very sure where I'll be. Could be in China, could be traveling. I say all 7 years, 7 years. So in end, I'll still just go and travel. They say I should, but as I said, I don't know time because I want to finish quite a lot of my travel and then along the way I could not be here. And it's wasted lah, like all these years. I have to all the so all these years, I said actually by right I supposed to finish already. My sound Korea and Japan, but the weather is not very good right now because of the recent change. So even until today, it's not rain very fast, right? Then stop. Funny, how come what happened to the weather? Strange. Yeah, I go and check my clothes a little bit. Okay, with my, you know, oh, that's my phone. Oh my god. I never take the phone. I buy already, I never take the phone. Okay. Okay. I took the phone. Okay. Okay. Oh, the phone outside. Yeah, I was walking just now after my lunch, and then I went to the Globe Central for walk. But halfway I feel a bit weak, and then I was sweating. I said, no, I was sweating. Why was I sweating? There's nothing wrong. Why I need to sweat? I feel so strange. Then maybe that's what they did the housekeeping, and then it's make me sweat. But it's nothing to do with the ginger. The chicken one got ginger. So I know that if I eat ginger, I will sweat. But now that one is not ginger. They try to want you to do the whole process. They want you to do the whole process again. I say I don't know. I just try to live my life. I travel first, assess the situation, see where are the interesting place to stay, or the hostel that I'll be staying at, the service office, also one of the possibility, and whether they can micro is how much is the rental. It can be expensive. It can be expensive. It can be very high flow. That's why I don't stay in there. Of course, if I stay in second floor, I'll need to go down. So a lot of things are beneficial. Say the small town is better than a big city, everything can be expensive. You can buy clothes and everything from Tianma, your bank account. First, you must establish you have the bank and convenient in that place. Open a bank account in that area, and then continue to send money and pass it out when you actually travel. And once you cannot get a hang of it, you set up in that place. And the money is transferred, but you can actually draw it in any other branches. It doesn't have to be exactly in the same branch. So you can try that once you want more, then you just go there, open another account, and transfer there, or the other one you transfer also. So you can have two. I have quite a lot, but one by one, I think I may have to close. The Bank of Agricultural Bank, the Agricultural Bank of China, ABC. Then is Hong Kong, China, CIBC, but I still like Bank of China is still the best. So this bank is still trustworthy. And yeah, weekend is good. Also want to see money. But I said I'm not really sure where 1,002 the rent divided by 5 is 250. Like doing electricity is still okay. But no, this one I say it's just a bonus one. Because this to cover my rent overseas and my living. Actually I also have all those overseas more. So that will be good lah. And the rest need to save more. At least 2035 then overseas. But I still like to stay here. On and off I'll put all my things. This is my place and people can in and out. Hopefully I'll come back and then arrange my things properly. And there's nothing important things, it's not so expensive. And I have a camera that I can install so that when I go overseas I can see. But if I kind of be living in the overseas, then I will clear all my things and store it over there in a store place. Maybe I bring the table and bring this table. It's so hard to keep it there. I put it there. Or maybe the sofa I bring here. But I don't think I need to ship. I just take everything. Because I just rent the room, I not rent the room. And yet when I come back, I can still stay for a few days. To maybe wash my clothes or just go out and see something. Do a long way lah. And too very far. Has gone. Is MIA. Say they are in Hong Kong. You can call him higher. His friend is higher than my father. There's no issue more because we are equal down here. Because they are the higher levels. Depends, but they are a lot of them are the government. So they are sure. Some of them are big ones. So they know better. So I don't know. My family workforce of all just because of me and people. They are not they want to talk about other people.
Of course, debate them thoroughly, including here in Parliament. But
Mr. Speaker, sir, this question I originally summoned.
why you're supposed to pose the question alone, the officer will respond.
Look, I can talk about more context of the question.
No.
I've actually posted a question to the senior
It's a
minister.
parliamentary question to be posted as a response to a supplementary question. You can post up.
Yes, I understand. Your office has decided, right? So, okay. The
Mr. Yeoman, why? Can you please sit down, allow them to respond, please? Thank you.
Question 2.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I'll also deal with the question that has been asked by Mr. Leon Pereira, which is scheduled for the subsequent sitting.
Please proceed.
On the same topic. A general approach is that law enforcement agencies do not disclose the names of individuals who have been or are being investigated. This general principle is subject to exceptions. One example where names have been disclosed is where the offender has absconded or left the jurisdiction while investigations are ongoing. For example, members may recall the case relating to P. Jiaping and Pansut Sri Wipal. The couple was involved in a series of alleged cheating cases involving luxury goods. They fled Singapore last year in 2022. While investigations were ongoing, the police released their details. A second example would be where the facts which constitute the alleged offences and the individuals who may have committed the alleged offences are already publicly known. For example, as a result of findings made by our courts, and there is some public interest in disclosing that investigations are underway. Such disclosure has to be weighed against possible prejudice to the individuals concerned. A case in point would be where, following the judgment of the High Court in the Party Liani case in 2020, police commenced investigations against her employer's son, Carl Liu, based on the High Court's observations that he had given dishonest evidence under oath. I informed this House of those investigations during the debates relating to the case. However, this does not mean that police will automatically publish the names of the individuals under investigations if their names have been made public in other earlier proceedings. The context in which the names have been published in the other proceedings, the nature of those proceedings, the nature of the offences being investigated, and the connection of the offences under investigation to the original proceedings, and whether the agencies have taken the view that subsequent criminal proceedings are or are not possible. All of these are relevant. An assessment of all the facts and the context has to be made in considering the public interest as to whether to disclose the names. Yet another type of example where names have been published is the case of Chu Eng Han. He had been convicted of several offences. He was then arrested when attempting to flee Singapore. Police made public the arrest on the day he and his accomplices were arrested, and their identities were released. After investigations, Chu and one accomplice were charged. A fourth example relates to Alex Hume. Alex Hume stated publicly that his passport had been impounded in respect of some conduct. Police then issued a media statement explaining that Hume was assisting the police but had not been arrested. A fifth example would be where police are investigating a case and there is a lot of misinformation. Police might then make public the accurate facts relating to the case to dispel the falsehoods, and we have done that in the past. As can be seen, there are a wide variety of situations where it may become necessary to make public the fact that the person is under investigation or has been arrested or is assisting in investigation. We have to assess the facts and the public interest involved. The circumstances relating to Mr. Lee Sen Yang and Mrs. Lee Swet Pun straddle the first two examples that I mentioned. The discussions surrounding number 38 Oxley Road are of significant public interest. One might say they are of at least as much interest as in the case of Hati Yani, if the two can even be compared. The Oxley Road matter was debated extensively in this House following ministerial statements on the subject. The findings by the disciplinary tribunal and the court of 3 judges in the disciplinary proceedings against Mrs. Lee Stratford and their findings on Mr. Lee Hsien Young and Mrs. Lee Stratford are matters of public record. Both the disciplinary tribunal and the court of 3 judges found that Mr. Lee Hsien Young and Mrs. Lee Stratford had lied under oath. And let me remind members of what both tribunals said. The court of 3 judges said that Mrs. Lee Stratford lied under oath, and I quote, "We agree with and affirm the DT," that's the disciplinary tribunal's finding, that Mr. Lee Hsien Young was not telling the truth when he said that he was the one who had forwarded the draft last will to the respondent. For the same reasons, we also agree with and affirm the DT's findings that the respondent's evidence on this issue, which I quote, Mr. Lee Hsien Young's, was similarly untrue and to be rejected. The respondent also claimed in her AEIC that after she received the draft last will from Mr. Lee Hsien Young, she did not even open it. We agree with the DT that it's implausible and ultimately incredible. We note that after the disciplinary proceedings were initiated, the respondent adopted the position which the DT rejected and which we too have rejected as false. The respondent did act with a degree of dishonesty in the disciplinary proceedings. Mr. Lee Hsien Young lied under oath. Mr. Lee Hsien Young was not telling the truth. If you go to what the disciplinary tribunal said at various parts, in essence, an elaborate edifice of lies was presented both on oath through Mr. Lee Hsien Young and the respondent's affidavits and on the witness stand, and through their public and other statements, which were referred to or relied upon during the disciplinary proceedings. The affidavits were contrived to present a false picture. Several of the lies were quite blatant. Considered in totality, the respondent's conduct was quite dishonest. Mr. Lee Hsien Young's and her conduct demonstrated a calculated attempt to ensure that Mr. Lee executed the last will as quickly as possible without due regard to Mr. Lee's wishes and hide their wrongdoing in having done so. Having procured the last will through these improper means, she and Mr. Lee Hsien Young then fabricated a series of lies and inaccuracies to perpetuate the falsehood that Mrs. Kwok Kim Lee had been involved in the last will and hide their own role in getting Mr. Lee to sign the last will and their wrongdoings. Mr. Lee Hsien Young and the respondent tried to explain away their conduct. Their explanations range from the improbable to the patently contrived to the downright dishonest. The respondent was a deceitful witness. Before us, she lied or became evasive whenever she thought it was to her benefit to lie or evade. Mr. Lee Hsien Young's conduct was equally deceitful. He lied to the public, he lied to the ministerial committee, and he lied to us. He had no qualms about making up evidence as he went along. We found him to be cynical about telling the truth. In plain language, the effect of what they said is this: Mr. Lee Hsien Young may make untrue statements in public and in private whenever there is no legal penalty for telling untruths. His public and private statements cannot be relied upon to be accurate. We do not find the explanations credible. Mr. Lee Hsien Young's explanations for the untruths in his posts were not credible. Mr. Lee Hsien Young knew the true facts. He admitted that some of his statements were inaccurate. Mr. Lee Hsien Young lied to the public about how the last will was drafted. He admitted to us that some of his statements were inaccurate. He said his public statements could be inaccurate because they are not sworn statements, and thus he may not look at them carefully. That was dishonest. The disciplinary tribunal in essence said that Mr. Lee Hsien Young and Mrs. Lee Stratford had combined to mislead and cheat the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. Police investigations were commenced based on the findings of the disciplinary tribunal and the court of 3 judges. Police did not make public at that time, in October 2021, that the couple was being investigated. The question was asked in this House earlier this month about some public statements which had been made relating to Oxley and the judgments of the disciplinary tribunal and the court of 3 judges. Members can look up the question and answer. The question required discussing the accuracy of those public statements in the context of the judgments of the disciplinary tribunal and the court of three judges. And it required dealing with the honesty or otherwise of Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Mrs. Lee Swetford, that there were ongoing police investigations arising from the findings of the tribunal and the court of three judges was in that context relevant and necessary to be disclosed to give an accurate and full answer. It was also accurate and to give a complete answer to mention that Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Mrs. Lee Swetford had not cooperated with the police investigations after saying that they would. The reasons for disclosing that Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Mrs. Lee Swetford were under investigation are broadly similar to the reasons why it was disclosed that Mr. Carl Liu was being investigated for perjury, except that in the case of Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Mrs. Lee Swetford, they have in addition absconded from jurisdiction. In Mr. Carl Liu's case, we were discussing his conduct and the conduct of other family members and the court's findings in this house. We thought it necessary to disclose in that context that Mr. Carl Liu was being investigated. He cooperated with the investigation. He has since been charged. Some members may also recall that I had said in this house, when we were discussing the Party Liani case, that if any judgment or decision issued in the course of any legal proceedings contains findings that there may have been perjury or other serious offenses, that is something that we will take seriously. We mean what we say. I do not recall any member expressing a different view that such lying on oath in court proceedings should not be taken seriously. That was the situation with Mr. Carl Liu, and that is the situation with Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Mrs. Lee Swetford. But as I said, with the added fact that they have also absconded. To summarize, the disciplinary tribunal and the court of three judges had said Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Mrs. Lee Swetford were lying. They had been found to be dishonest and mocked. All of that is public. They have also essentially absconded from jurisdiction. We take this seriously, and those facts were disclosed so that this House can have a full and complete picture when a question had been asked which related to their conduct. If we cannot or should not answer the question in part or full, then we would have said so. In deciding whether we make public that investigations are ongoing, one factor which is considered is prejudice to the person being investigated. If the investigation shows that the person is innocent or an assessment is made that his guilt cannot be established in court, and if his name had been publicized earlier, a cloud would have hung over him until he was clear. Thus, the general position is that names are not disclosed. Whether names should be released in a particular situation is a matter of judgment on what public interest requires. The examples I gave earlier illustrate the exceptions when names were made public. For example, if you take the case of Mr. Carl Liu, what is the prejudice to him? In Mr. Carl Liu's case, the High Court had taken the view that he was not telling the truth. The prejudice to him in disclosing that he was under investigations for their finding of lying is marginal, if any, and has to be weighed against the public interest at stake in disclosing the facts when the matter is being discussed in Parliament. Same applies to Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Mrs. Lee Swetford. Members who are not lawyers may not know this, but when a disciplinary tribunal says that a person is guilty, it can only do so if it is satisfied beyond reasonable doubt on the guilt. Likewise, the court of three judges in disciplinary proceedings. The statements in Parliament about Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Mrs. Lee Swetford do not materially add to any cloud the couple may already be under based on what the tribunal and the court of three judges have said. If the facts are different, then the position will be different. For example, say a name had been published in other proceedings and the court had made some findings. But if our agencies are not able to prosecute the individual based on earlier court findings, because they assess that despite the earlier court findings, substantial new facts have been proven, and that relevant evidence is not available, and that relevant witnesses are not available, then there can be arguments both ways on disclosure, and an assessment has to be made on the specific facts, and a judgment has to be made. But the cases of Mr. Liu and the Lees are quite different. And as I have said, in the case of the Lees, they have also absconded. I can tell members that there is another case where the highest court has made observations that a couple of persons had lied on oath. That matter is also being investigated. If there is a relevant question or issue about that matter, I can see that we will also set out the facts and say that police are investigating. But just like with Mr. Lee Hsien Young and Mrs. Lee Suet Fun, initially when investigations had first commenced, police had not volunteered the information. But police will respond with the facts if there is a need to. For example, questions are raised in Parliament. Mr. Lee Hsien Young and Mrs. Lee Suet Fun will have every right to provide explanations on the matters being investigated if they eventually decide to do the right thing. And cooperate with the police. It is their choice whether they want to be fugitives from justice or whether they come and explain why they say the courts were wrong to say that they had lied. The case of Keppel Offshore Marine Limited is quite different. It does not fall within the different examples I've set out. Members may not know this, but it was KOM which had made the CPIB report. The CPIB had conducted as thorough an investigation as it could with the information and powers that it possessed. It turned all the stones it could and assessed the evidence together with AGC. They concluded that they could not sustain any charges in court. The conduct had taken place overseas. Key witnesses are not available. Key documents are also not available. We got some information from Brazil, but it was not adequate to mount any criminal charge. There were no admissions which could be relied upon to cross the evidentiary requirements. The documents between the US authorities and KOM and the DPA also do not meet the evidentiary requirements. They go some way, but they don't cross the threshold in respect of those who are being investigated. The CPIB, for good reasons, has the reputation for being able to ferret out the truth. But even the CPIB can't get something out or proceed with charges when there are no documents or other evidence which cross the evidential threshold and which can be used to break down the interviewee's defenses. In these circumstances, the general policy of not disclosing the names of individuals who have been under investigation applies. However, if any member feels that this general policy should be changed and that law enforcement agencies should name all individuals who are being investigated, regardless of the circumstances, and even if they are not abscondees from jurisdiction, and even if no charges are likely to be brought in the end, then please let me know and we can debate that. I would be surprised if anyone says that. If everyone agrees that persons under investigations should in general not be named, then the only question is the circumstances under which, nevertheless, names will be disclosed. And I have explained some examples of when names have been disclosed. The fact that no one raised any issues with Mr. Liu being named, or when the names of the other abscondees have been disclosed, shows that no one in this House took issue with this disclosure. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Leong.
Speaker, I thank the Minister for the explanation. I have three SQ.
You keep it to 2 SQ so the others can ask us. I'll come back to you if there's time.
Yeah. Well, the issue here is really about fairness before the law, whether we have the rule of law in Singapore or not. The Minister has shared that some of the exceptions involve the offender having absconded or absconded. May I ask the first question then? Did the police specifically issue a written order for Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Ms. Lim Shep-Fen to attend to the investigation at the police station? Secondly, he mentioned the difference between the KOM case and this case. But isn't the KOM case also a matter of very wide public interest? A lot of people are very interested in the names of the 6 individuals. And I do not understand the legal process very well, but under the stern warning letter, is there a paragraph that say that these 6 individuals of the KOM are guilty, but the prosecutor decided, or the CPIB decided not to pursue the case because of some other reason. So we have a situation here that for the KOM case, actually it's a more serious case. They are actually guilty. And we have the names in the foreign jurisdiction documents or that already, actually. This one point. Second point is that the KOM case is actually of deep public interest. So why is there a double standard? Thank you.
So, I took some care to explain the difference between the KOM case and the case of Mr. Liu and the Lees. As I understand the member, he says that, well, the KOM case is a case of public interest. People are interested to know the names. So why is there a double standard? Did the member listen to the explanation on the difference between the KOM case and the case of the Lees and Mr. Liu? Perhaps the member can go into a little bit of detail based on the explanation I've given on the differences and tell us which part of the explanation he disagrees before he alleges double standards. Get to the facts. I have set out what the differences are. Tell me which part you don't understand or you disagree with. And on his first question, did police issue a written order? They were given an email, they promised that they will come and agree, give an interview. They then left the jurisdiction and they have said both to the police and the public that they will not cooperate with the police. They will not even come back into the jurisdiction. I think that is why I said they essentially absconded from justice. But for the record, I have made it very clear why the disclosure here is consistent with the disclosure in Carl Liu's case. And you, sir, through you, I would also like to ask Mr. Leong, if Mr. Leong didn't see any problem when Mr. Liu's name was mentioned in similar circumstances. In fact, he took part in the debate and wanted a commission of inquiry. Why this extraordinary concern suddenly about the lease that he didn't show for Mr. Liu? And perhaps he can explain why his approach shows double standards.
Mr. Liu.
Minister, there you go again. I asked you a question and you
Mr. Liu,
framed it in a
Mr. Liu.
different context.
You can address it to me.
Yes.
Lower the temperature.
Yes,
Thank you.
he addressed it in a different context and then asked me a question. But can you answer my question first? Did the police issue a written order to Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Ms. Lim Shep-Fen?
No, I answered the question.
Understand.
On email. Okay.
Mr. Leon Pereira.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So thank you, Minister, for his reply. Just one SQ on the general principle behind when these disclosures of ongoing investigations are made. When the government decides that it is in the public interest to make a disclosure about an ongoing investigation, what are the safeguards put in place to make sure that that disclosure to the public domain does not prejudice in some way the conduct of due process, a subsequent trial, and so on that will happen later on? Thank you.
I thank Mr. Pereira for the question. That's in fact the key point. Like, one could say that that is the key point of making a decision on going public. And that is why you need to look carefully at the facts. So if you look at the facts relating to Mr. Liu and the lease, what has happened? The High Court has said that in the case of Mr. Liu, perhaps in less clear language, in the case of the lease, very direct language, which I've taken you through, that, at least Mr. Liu as well as the two leases were not telling the truth. The investigation relates back to that very point on which the courts have taken a view as to whether they lied or didn't lie. That is why I said the prejudice is very marginal, if any. And as for the other aspect of prejudice, that people will think less well of them, the fact that we repeat in this House what the courts have already said about them is not going to increase the cloud, as it were. So these are factors in prejudice that you should take into account, both the legal prejudice of fair trial as well as public perception prejudice. You should consider even before your release. You don't try and recover ground after that and shore up, as it were. You make these calculations before what's the extent of prejudice. And you release the information, but always bearing in mind, sometimes public interest may require disclosure, even if it means some degree of prejudice. So that's an assessment, and it's an assessment we have to make. In this case, in the case of the lease, I have explained why I think the prejudice is pretty much non-existent, because we are simply repeating what has been said and saying that the police are investigating that matter, which everyone would expect us to do anyway, because I've said in this House we will investigate these matters. So what's the prejudice? But there may be other cases potentially where the prejudice could be a little bit more. So we have to assess public interest, and that is why we have Parliament. And if somebody takes a different view on prejudice, we will have to answer the questions. Thank you.
Mr.
And they will obviously be entitled to their full rights to give their version of events, and they will be entitled to defend their position in court.
Mr. Willett.
Thank you, Speaker. I have one supplementary question for the Minister. To get understanding of what he said earlier, I think the question was posed to him by Mr. Leong about whether the police had actually issued an order to Mr. Lee Hsien Yang and Mrs. Lee to attend the interview, and his answer was that they were emailed and they said that they would cooperate. So do I read from that that actually the police had not gotten to the stage when an order under the CPC, Criminal Procedure Code, was actually issued to them?
That is right, sir. So a specific order under the CPC was not issued. The police normally would not issue such an order. They would first contact and speak with and send a written document. And if a party says that they will cooperate, the police would assume in good faith that that's how they would proceed. And that is what was done. And the next thing the police heard was another email from the couple saying that they would not cooperate. But by then they were already, as I said, essentially absconded from jurisdiction.
Hazel.
Thank the Minister for his reply. The Minister mentioned that the disciplinary tribunal and the court of three judges have found them guilty of lying under oath, but exactly what lies these are were not mentioned. Can the Minister share with us what exactly are these lies they were found to have said? And secondly, there is much chatter that the investigation and the timing of the release of this information is linked to the interview with Bloomberg, where Mr. Lee Hsien Yang actually said that he might consider running for president. So would the Minister like to clarify on the situation?
On the first point, as to exactly what the lies were, I would invite the member to read the disciplinary tribunal's judgment and the Court of Three Judges judgment. It is also the relevant extracts are Senior Minister Teo's answer as an annex. I think when we give answers in Parliament, we expect members to read them. And I don't think we want to waste Parliament's time by me going through that again. On the second point, can I invite member to make clear, is the member suggesting that there is a connection between the Bloomberg interview and the disclosure in Parliament? Because we do not repeat rumors from outside. Is the member suggesting that? I would like to know that before I answer.
No, I'm not suggesting that, but I am aware that there are such speculations going on and it's quite prevalent. So I'm merely asking if the minister would like to take this opportunity to clarify.
If that is not being suggested, then I would ask, sir, through you, that the member withdraw that part of the question, and I'll answer the rest of the question.
And there are further questions, Ms. Hazelport. There are many rumors swirling about on many other issues. We don't necessarily think them.
If that is the situation, then I withdraw the question.
Mr. Villain,
Don't I withdraw the question? I'll answer the question.
Minister.
I'm trying to now recall, but my recollection is that the Bloomberg interview came after the answer given by Senior Minister Teo, and therefore even the prescience of this government could not have foretold that Mr. Lee Hsien Loong was going to give such an interview. I stand corrected, but that's my recollection of the sequence of events. And if a question is asked in Parliament, we answer. The debate for us is, I have explained the reasons why the answer was given. No one took issue when I disclosed that Mr. Liu was being investigated. I assume that everyone accepted the principle, and I've explained how that principle applies here. If anyone challenges us on that, I'm prepared to debate. But the principle is the same. Thank you.
Hello, I'm back already. The clothes I wash is quite dry, so it's good lah. So okay, I don't see the news already. I actually very tired. I just sometimes a bit curious. What is it? There are a lot of things to do, but I just take my time. Tomorrow I say I just go to this or to this. Just few days to be go to center. Sell and sell for my exhibition. You know, if I have, I buy one more. I think most likely if I go to overseas, maybe I have the camera. So I just close cover this part here, and then this part here, this part here, this part only to cover, and maybe cover the side. So one cloth, then that's it. For this part, no need to cover. This part, then that one got the Wi-Fi link to the webcam. So most likely I just buy one webcam, and then I put a tripod here, then I focus here, see the whole angle, or maybe I put it in tripod, I put it in the center, because I'm leaning already, I just put them, I focus everything, and then I can see that one I think cannot really do what happen. Some of the one jam, some of it spoiled, which is true. It may be working now, but I don't know what the software that time I delete the software. Let's go back. So maybe I can't have it then. So we try for get down there, fix it there, and see all the way angle. That one is not much. See all the way. So that will be before I go to China. The Philippines will be much more expensive. Then along the way now, still early. Still early to do it. Because still not involved. So let's see. The first one. So most like can be April. April 1 all the way until 12. So somewhere around 3rd, and 3rd October. I'm not sure. Ramadan campaign. It is. It is. This one I log in. Okay, I log in. A lot of games to play now. That's why I say. What is? Uh, okay, let's play e-football. I play different games, not because of what, it's just that really I sometimes see got new games I just play. So it's like these 2 days I just waiting for the situation. Like I said, most likely Saturday if I want to go, or Friday to Malaysia. I'm not sure yet because I see the expenses and everything and plan everything and Friday. Say why not after? I'm still trying to get hold of, who. So if I not able to, I can't decide what is good next and this and that. I just try a little bit, see. How last very long now? No need to check now. Last very long. I like the one, what's his name? Very good in play. Brazilian one. But see now, in other, maybe not in EPL, what the ways. It's a very good player. Uh, I always buy in Philippines. No need I just go to the one rounding and blah 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 blah. And carry a big one rounding buy five more. Then after that, only I think 60 pesos. And before, Injagi. What kind is good? Private. I want private. What else? Gold. Hazard. Hazard is a very good player. I still like the very nice. XG. 1,001. Playing using not really. Kodami ID. happened to my internet? Oh, very slow. Oh my. never delete, no. I just put the spam that side only. See, here your spam is empty. Strange. Then I put here. Here spam is empty. Wow. Very slow.